Hello. Uh, okay, so Rabbi Malak said hi, and I said, we have a rabbi in the house. I can go home. And I can go home because this is my home. Get it? Dun-dun-dun. Okay. So Jason is at a wedding, uh, which is a beautiful thing. Neil is sick. Um, I don't think we've ever actually had a talk, Neil. We should do that. I didn't really have anything prepared. Don't know what to tell you guys. Here, I'll show you something I just found on Twitter, which was hilarious. You would not be the first person to come on who's lying in bed, Neil. Um, Trey apparently thinks it's almost a requirement. So there's this Twitter account which I've been considering not following because um, most of the stuff is kind of weird and funny. I mean, is like a bit, by funny I mean gratuitously puerile. But yeah, so uh, this is the most recent one. Um, I forgot to like it. I guess I could also retweet it. Moses Tier Powers. This is an actual name. Yeah. So, um, hello, Rocco. Hello, Nathaniel. So, what are we talking about today? If nobody's gonna jump on, maybe I should. Your thumbnail led me to believe you'd be streaming Minecraft and doing voiceover. No, that's actually the thumbnail is. Uh, so when the whole Chabad tunnel thing happened, uh, that was one of the memes. Um, this is the first time I've tried this tea. Okay, well, if nobody's gonna jump on, I need to finish the Mishnayot of Avodah Zarah for by the end of the month. Uh, Rabbi David Shochat, Rabbi David ben Dov Yehuda, I believe his father's name was, passed away recently, and his shloshim is going to be at the end of the month. He was one of the most prominent. What are you talking about? The Mishnah Avodah Zarah is Bible study. What are you even talking about, Rabbi? I don't even know what you're talking about. The Mishnah is Bible study. I dare you to refute me. So, especially when we're talking here. So, isn't Bible Tanakh? Maybe to Gentiles it is. What, you don't think I should do the Mishnah? if you don't I okay, if you think that I should not do the Mishnah, Rabbi, I will not do my Mishnah. Hello, Bush 1G. You're new here, I believe. Yay, Neil's gonna jump on. I mean, yes. I'm not the boss of you, nor do I dictate to others what to do. Look, Rabbi, if you don't, if I personally, as I understand it, first of all, the Mishnah Avodah Zarah, it's nogea to Bnei Noach, right? So, like, I can't even see how, like, it's one of the last things I would say the Isser of teaching Torah apply. The rabbi thinks it's Geneva Stas. Well, okay. We're using Bible study the way Protestants use the word Bible study, and Bible study for Protestants just means that okay. For Protestants, that's just an excuse for guys to get together and drink beer, smoke cigars, drink beer. That's what they call it, Bible study. I was trying to figure out what you thought might be. Hello, Neil. You got out of bed.
I did. Hey, Jacob. How are you?
Good. How are you?
It's a pleasure to meet you. Really.
It is very nice to meet you. Who are you?
Did you watch my randos with Chad? Do you have any background?
I'll be honest with you. I think I did, and I was like, I like this Neil guy, but there are a lot of people in this little corner.
A lot of randos.
And it's really, really hard for me to keep. Right. Really, really difficult for me. But like, I watched it and I was like, and I listen to those like while I'm doing other things usually. So I was like, I like this Neil guy, but I remember almost nothing. And like Matthew says, there is another Neil.
There's at least three, at least. And there's one organizing the symbolic world. So that adds a wrinkle to things.
I kind of sort of wanted to go to the symbolic world one, but the Lords of Spirits conference, Father Stephen invited me to, so I felt it was fine for me to go, but I thought I would be intruding if I went to the symbolic world one. It's obviously an Eastern Orthodox event, and without an invitation, I don't think that's a place an Orthodox Jew should go. Especially one who gets accused of proselytizing like I do all the time.
Yeah.
Enough about me, Neil. You tell me about you. Who are you? Where are you? What do you do? How'd you get here?
I can give you the 2-minute cliff notes, and then we can go to 5 or 10, however much you want. So I grew up in a town called Edison, New Jersey. I was raised Presbyterian, mainline. I think that's probably part of my affinity with PBK is that. So he grew up in Patterson, which is a relatively poor area, but it's only about 20 minutes away from where I grew up. And so I know that area of New Jersey pretty well. And I know the kind of the culture and the attitude. And I grew up like middle class suburbia, row houses, townhouses. I went to Rutgers. I joined ZBT at Rutgers, which is
Oh, so you're half Jewish.
historically Jewish. Exactly. Zion b'mishpat tipedeh. That's the only.
Wow, you actually said that very well.
Thank you. Yeah, no. So, but I have a close affinity with, let's say, the secular. Actually, we had some Orthodox Jews in our fraternity. We had a few.
So it's Bible study. We have to translate. Sion b'mishpat tipade means that Zion will be. Yes, he's quoting Isaiah. ZBT. So Rabbi Mullet, I don't think would know this, but I, having spent a lot of time at Chabad houses near college campuses, ZBT is one of two traditionally Jewish fraternities. The other one being AEPI.
Yep.
And yes, so apparently you guys say ZBT stands for Zion. So Zion, b'mishpat, with justice, tipade, will be redeemed. Yeah.
When I joined, I had the full liturgy, and I have my foreskin up there as proof. I'm just teasing you.
That now I feel like part of the ZBT. I think I had heard that before.
There is a really funny line in the initiation ritual that's about getting on your knees and easing the cows. I can't even say it. It's getting on your knees and easing the camel's burden. That's the line.
Oh, God.
Sorry, this is probably not the best way to start out a relationship.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful.
But every Friday night, or I shouldn't say every Friday night, but often we would be invited to the Chabad house, and we toast with the rabbi, and it was an amazing time,
Mm-hmm.
So I will say
how old are you?
38.
38. Married?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Kid? Yes, just one.
Just one. Is that
your
kid stuff behind you?
Yep. She's almost 8. So all of this is from roughly the 2000 to 2002 time frame. I'd say 2001 actually, because what happened was I used to travel a lot for work.
Okay.
COVID changed all that, and it was like my daughter hit the age where she'd say, "Daddy, don't go." And then I wasn't going anywhere because COVID hit, and doing video calls, very hard to build relationships with people over a screen. Mm-hmm. But what I decided to do, because she was, doing a crazy amount of art, I said, I'm just going to decorate this whole wall with her stuff. And it was, during that time, especially like the 2000 to 2020, 2021 timeframe, everybody, is just so anxious and depressed and dreary, like getting on calls. And so I turn on my camera and show that, and instantly it'd be an icebreaker. It'd be a way to
it's beautiful.
Kind of
I love it.
Lighten the mood. Yeah.
I love it.
The Mosaic Vision with Tom Lukeson right there.
Luke Thompson.
I've made this joke at him before. If he watches this, he'll know what I'm doing there. Yeah, I know. The evil twin of Luke Thompson.
You're the evil twin of Luke Thompson?
No.
I somehow doubt it. I see. So Tom Lukeson is the evil twin of the. So
I play with words a lot. This is what I do. I play with words.
So would that be somebody who actually makes sense every once in a while?
Well played.
Okay, so how'd you on ramp onto this into little corner? Yeah.
So I was a Sam Harris. I was a Sam Harris follower.
How long ago?
I first encountered JBP with his first conversation with Sam Harris, which was titled "What is Truth?" And I thought it was the dumbest conversation between two smart people that I had ever heard. Like 2 hours, they go on and on and on. And I don't know if you listened to that conversation.
I did.
That was okay. That was January 2017. And then after after that conversation, I said, "There's got to be more to this guy." Because every time he was talking, I was like, "No, what he means is wisdom." Like every time he was talking, I was like, "He's not talking truth; he's talking wisdom." And so then I found his Rogan conversation, and then I was like, man, I've never heard anything like this before. This is
Okay.
And then the Genesis series, and simultaneously, what was going on in my personal life is I was no longer climbing the corporate ladder. I had moved to where my wife's from, and I was working like 40 hours a week instead of 60 hours a week, and I was kind of aimless. I didn't have any friends. Our relationship changed as a result of having our daughter, so I was feeling just resentful, angry, bitter, alone. And when Peterson talks about, like if you're feeling resentful and bitter, it's one of two things: either you're being taken advantage of, which I wasn't, or you're just immature and need to grow up. And then once the Genesis series started, man, that hooked me, because I look at JBP now as my John the Baptist, as the voice crying out in the wilderness. Because during that time, what I was doing is I was setting the things in my life right that I could set. And then my wife is a born and raised cradle Catholic. Her family, Vietnamese Americans. Her grandfather worked for the CIA during the Vietnam War. So her other grandfather was the equivalent of not the Supreme Court of Vietnam judge, but a level right below that. And so in 1975, like literally a week before the fall of Saigon, her grandfather on her mother's side came home one day and said, like, pack everything, we got to go now. And Saigon fell literally a week later, or less than that. Yeah. And they stayed on military bases for a while. And then what happens is the Catholic Church matches up, or during the 1970s, they matched up families to these Vietnamese Catholic immigrants. Most Vietnamese are Buddhist still, but it's about 5 to 10% of Vietnamese. And we have roughly 3 million Vietnamese Americans because of that came over after the fall of Saigon. And but I met my wife traveling in my job, and she's born and raised in New Orleans. She went to Notre Dame, and but she's very close knit family. Like I found something with her and her family that I had never experienced, which was multi-generational love surrounding family. So it's like every night dinner with grandparents and parents, and
I have to
introduce
you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I really want to introduce you to my friend Jason. He married. He also married somebody Vietnamese, and basically what he grew up Jewish and Catholic. His father's Catholic, and what he really loves, he's like, yeah, Vietnam might not have, he really hates the weather and lots of things, but he's like, yeah, but they have family in ways that we really don't here. Yeah.
It was just being surrounded, for lack of a better word, is being surrounded by love. And it was like a level of love within a close-knit structure that I had never, not that I didn't have, I had that love within my own nuclear family growing up. And I had two very loving, amazing parents, but it was in that nuclear structure, and it was very different. It was very, it was very American. It was versus traditional. Like it was very individualist. Sorry?
Do you have siblings?
So I had a half brother. So I'll just say, if you watch that piece of my conversation with Chad, I'm not going to tell it better than I told it then.
Then you did it there.
So I had a half brother, and that happened right around the time of well, okay, I'll give you the cliff notes. So had a half brother, brilliant guy, right? Both my parents were married before they married each other. My half brother was 10 years older than me from my father's previous marriage. And he came in second in the math Olympiad in high school, like lead programmer for Vonage, which was the first to do voice over internet. Like absolutely brilliant, but was always convinced that he was right and others were wrong. And it cost him career after career after career. And he drank heavily, chain smoker. My father would be on his case all the time. And during that time, like the only time I saw him was during my wedding, and that was about 3 years prior. And then I come home from a business trip one day, and my mother texts me that he's dead. And all I had in my head when that was happening is the Peterson, Cain and Abel, Cain going, "Am I my brother's keeper?"
Mhm.
And that was like percolating in my head, like, "Am I my brother's keeper?" for 2 weeks. And then I attended a Catholic wedding in Texas with my wife, and I've attended numerous Catholic events. We got married with the assumption that I would, you know, that our kids would be raised Catholic, that I would just be part of the team. I had a good, you know, Protestant upbringing. I had no issue with that upbringing for our children, and that I would go to. We had the expectation I would go to like Christmas, Easter, you know, all the big events, and I, you know, I'd be there. And and so we went to this Catholic wedding and then I had an experience during that mass that if you told me that morning was possible, especially without drugs, I would have
Mhm.
said, "You're out of your mind. It's not. No,
Mhm.
that sort of thing doesn't happen unless you are on drugs."
Mhm.
And then after I had that experience, that was the crystallizing event that made me reevaluate all my axioms, everything from the ground up.
How long ago was this?
November of 2017. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
about
7 years. Okay.
so it was a long time ago. Yeah. So like I said, it was shortly after the Genesis lectures. Like I had the Genesis. I think the Genesis lectures were still going on, actually. I think it was up to like Jacob, and
Mhm.
I remember listening to Joseph and the Coat of Many Colors after that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I attended a retreat in May the following year that my wife's aunt and uncle invited me to. That was my first confession. That was an incredible experience,
Mhm.
formative experience. And also during that time, I just started writing out what I believed and why. And I exposed myself to all of the arguments in the literature and the things that initially assuaded me. Because 9/11 was I would say was a significant part of my deconstruction when I was a kid, because I was in New Jersey. I didn't have any family or friends who died in 9/11, but there were about 4 or 5 kids in my high school who had parents who passed away.
Mhm.
And so it was pretty, and I was 16 at the time. Like it hit pretty hard. And the prevailing wisdom at the time was that these guys were crazy, that, you know, they were cowards. And I was like, they're definitely not crazy, and they're definitely not cowards. And so Sam Harris, with The End of Faith, he made a pretty compelling argument to me that he said the problem is faith, because the faith means beliefs without evidence, and it's the postmodern problem, right? What gives them any more right to what gives me any more right to believe that what I believe is true than they, especially if they're willing to die for it.
Great.
And so that gave me the excuses I need to just kind of wash away, you know, all really responsibility to live in a certain way, especially during college and after. And it was really only a sufficient amount of suffering, I'll say, that brought me back to God on my knees. You know, I don't
Mhm.
know what else to. And so, have you listened to any of the T. Grog stuff that went on today, or
Uh, Today, no, I didn't see
today? Okay,
anything.
because
Yeah.
it was like a 2.5 hour conversation with T. Grog, and he reminds me of I wasn't on. I couldn't make that, but he reminds me of my father a little bit. And I imagine if my father grew up in a fundamentalist environment the way he grew up, that my father could have very much been similar to him. And he's just a skeptical guy. Like, he wants things like concrete, you know, anything that's not like concrete and clear. But for me, I think what flipped in my head is that I started to believe that the fundamental, it's like Shakespeare saying all the world's a stage.
Mhm.
And where if you believe that God created the world primarily, or did God create consciousness primarily? And so I believe that God created consciousness, let's say children
Okay.
first. And so everything else that's in this, you
Yeah.
know, that's all set, you know, that's all setting. So
Okay.
you like which is which is more primal or fundamental? You can pick whatever adjective you want, but which is the more is my pain and suffering more? Yeah, go ahead.
My only concern is I'm afraid you might be walking into Gnosticism backwards, but yeah.
Except the problem is my faith centers around the Eucharist because I experienced this miracle. So I don't know what else to tell you. But
hey, what, it's funny. Just today, I was reading a biography of the Chabad Rebbe, and and just today, like it was going on about how he was talking about how there are many Jews who believe that it's better to be secular than to be Christian, and the Rebbe was like, no, there it in many ways he was like he was quite adamant. So I'll tell you a Baal Shem Tov story. The Baal Shem Tov was traveling from one city to another, and he had a wagon driver, and just as they get out of the city, he says to his wagon driver, hold on, I need to go back and get something. And the wagon driver goes back around and takes him back to his house, and he says, I changed my mind, I'm not going on the trip. And the wagon driver is like, why? And finally he gets the Baal Shem Tov to say why, and the Baal Shem Tov says, well, all the other Christians, when we pass a church, cross themselves, and you didn't do that. And I wasn't, I was afraid you were going to kill me. And the wagon driver was gobsmacked, because that was his plan, was once they got out of the city to kill and rob him.
So it's kind of like a Balaam and the donkey story right there. Right? That's kind of the angel, man.
Yeah. But so I'm assuming you're a committed Catholic. How come I don't see you with Father Eric very often?
I'm too high in openness. And I was talking to Chad about, I don't mean that against Father Eric, but I was talking to Chad about this, and I see TLC as a space to play rather than a space that's structured. Whereas, Father Eric is setting up a space where people who are either Catholic or Catholic curious can come and participate and learn more about Catholicism, which I think is great. I would consider myself more of someone going out. Send them out.
Do you Discord much?
No, not my style.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't have any problem talking to people on Discord. I would just prefer, because you can't. So easy to misconstrue text. So most of the time when I'm in the chat section, I'm just joking around, and I'm if I can bring a smile to someone's face, and make someone laugh, in the name of something good, let's say, then I'm doing a good job. And if I get 1 out of 3 jokes, I'm batting 300. I'm good. That's how I feel. So
Rabbi Mullen has a special request. This is a joke that Pastor Tanner, who is a Reformed Baptist preacher in Colorado, told me. Yeah. So a priest walks, not a priest, the pastor is teaching Sunday school. And so he says to the students, okay, what has 4 legs, stores nuts for the winter, and lives in a tree? And all of the students,
squirrel.
Well, they're like, they don't know what to say, right? So he calls on Timmy. And he says, Timmy, what has 4 legs, stores nuts for the winter, and lives in a tree? And Timmy says,
Jesus.
It sounds like it could be a squirrel, but I'll say Jesus. Yeah,
It's a safe bet.
yeah. I mean, look, have you seen the Bible? What's the Bible Project YouTube videos?
I think I've seen a few. It's kind of like corny animation with. I think I've seen a few, just a few. And they got
Yes,
like 500,000 views, right? Yeah.
they have lots and lots of views, and lots of people in this little corner love them. And they helped me convince that the University of Wisconsin Madison is the epicenter of all evil in our society.
I'll have to lovingly disagree with you and say there are definitely multiple centers of evil in our society.
Yeah, but there's a lot of, I mean, I have to say, there's a wokeism that comes out of Madison, and also the Hebrew department there. Michael Heiser came out of there, and one of the Bible Project guys. And I'm watching. Every time I watch one, I'm like, oh my God, how did they shoehorn Jesus into that?
Yeah, man, I'm always hesitant to judge what other people find meaningful, compelling, interesting. I would say the number one sin of TLC, number one sin, is judging of what I'll call blue collar or lower middle class or working class Christians. Oh yeah, like the person who goes to the mega church and just loves the music and feels the presence of God and has no intellectual desire to explore the concept of God. We disdain that person in the corner. We have no tolerance for that simpleton. And I'm fairly confident that person's faith probably blows mine out of the water.
I am. I mean, I have certainly seen that type in that type of disdain in certain places. I wouldn't say it's pervasive. I certainly don't think. I mean, we have a lot of blue collar guys who listen, like Michael Sartori, definitely.
But they're all smart, Jacob. Everybody in this space is smart.
Yes, but that's just, I mean, the way this, like, if you're not the type of person to be interested, you're not going to get engaged. And I agree with you that it's a problem that we don't have an ability. So this is one of the reasons I don't like Estuary, is you have to be the type of person who likes to sit around and talk. And I think what's far more important than sitting around and talking is being able to sit with other people and be silent.
See, I think where I'm differing from most people in the corner is my goal. My primary goal is to build individual relationships with individual people in the space. And that's why I'm not on Discord, because that is not a space for building individual relationships with individual people. I have Chad's number. I have McMo's number. I text them. I call them. I like them as people. I want to be around them. Like I want to hang out and be with them. Like I want.
Who's the second person you said?
His name's McMo, McMosive. MCMO. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was a music leader in his church, and he hasn't told his full story, so I don't want to spoil it. But he's very smart and very creative, and his humor is like mine, and
I think I've seen him in the comments. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Well, so my whole thing is I'm trying to build something that will be there even when I'm gone. I think Vervaeke is very correct about saying tell me what you want to be there even when you're not. And that is what gives you meaning in life, right? And what I hope is a community, right? My Discord server, this channel, and frankly, I'm trying to take it offline into actual human relationships, and that's why I am focusing on Los Angeles. Is I want a community that runs without me.
It's noble. It's good. Yeah. So I first got involved in YouTube because my hobby is game development, and so I have a not to self promote or anything, but I have a game development channel, and I started. So when I was about 6 months into doing game development tutorials and stuff, I said like, oh, I should start a Discord because I'm curious what'll happen. Like I'm curious the kind of people, and I could learn from people, and they can learn from me, and we could develop community. And excuse me. And so I did that, and it started out pretty strong. I would say for the first 3 months, we were meeting like every Friday evening, and there was kind of a good participatory vibe, and people were it was kind of a show and tell. Like people were kind of showing what they built and asking for feedback, and also asking questions, and it was good. It was in that spirit of, hey, we're brothers and let's help each other. And then it started to turn, and I don't know exactly why or when or how, because it was a subtle kind of gentle thing, but it started to turn to like two things. It was people coming in being like, I'm doing this project. Does anybody want to join me? I'm gonna hire people, or I'm gonna do this, or I need this. It's the self promotion. And then there was also the, how do I say that? It was people came in and just said, like, I have this issue, help me. I have this issue. It's like, yes, but are you willing to participate? Like, are you willing to help others, or do you just want help like in the moment of this thing? And so after about 9 months or so of that, I just decided to shut down the Discord. And they were pissed at me. They were like, hey, we actually still meet. And I was like, this guy has another Discord. I'm giving you 2 months to move, like copy whatever you want, like, but I'm shutting it down. It was not in the right spirit. And it's, I don't know. Like the conclusion I've drawn from that is just the natural tendency of any community is, what is it doing for me? Like what can I get out of this? Like hold on to it, turn it into an idol, basically, whatever that
Right.
is. And somehow TLC isn't that. And so that's why I love it. Like I'm not trying to get anything out of TLC. Like I'm not trying to get anything aside from like, I like a person, and I want to establish a contact and relationships with, and like my initial impression of you has been revised significantly over the last few weeks in an upward positive direction.
Okay.
No, seriously, Jacob. Like I've noticed a change in your tenure from say like 6 months ago when I was just a lurker to now. Like you seem far. How do I say this? Like you're more intent on surfing the wave versus commanding the wave. King Knut, KNUT. You know that guy? Never heard of him? Oh, it's okay. It's before your time. So,
I mean, what has changed is I have decided to withdraw from much of TLC.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I mean, I think I have contributed as much as I can, and I decided, my thing has always been, I try to help as much as I can, but I don't know if it's been exactly 6 months, but for the past 6 months, my decision has been I am going to focus on my own community and my own thing, and basically withdraw mostly. And I've been, I mean, I never do things spur of the moment. I am very long term. There's what I like to say to people is there's not going to be a time, with me, it's not like, oh, now we're good friends and tomorrow we're not. That's not That's not
Yeah.
how I work, right? And so, yeah, I have been withdrawn. But what I was going to say is, um, there's always something at the top of the hierarchy, and if what's at the top of the hierarchy is not God, whatever is at the top of the hierarchy will become an idol. That's, yeah.
I think the way I evaluate it, and obviously I'm biased because I feel like I'm on one side of this line, but the way I evaluate it is the spirit of TLC increasing or diminishing our faith? And estuary, for that matter, is so. I am also not of the opinion that estuary is just an or that conversation is an automatic net good. Is it increasing or diminishing our faith? And I think this space, probably for those that have not been exposed to a wide range of ideas, it's probably not the healthiest space because it's chaotic. The space is chaotic. The internet is chaotic. So if you haven't already swam in, let's say, treacherous waters in some way, shape, or form, then you might not be ready for it. So,
Hey, Sandy.
Hey, Sandy.
Hey, I clicked off in between estuary and dangerous waters. What was the key I missed?
I was making the point that I don't think estuary is automatically a net good thing, or I don't think that exploring, let's say, the chaotic waters of TLC is an automatic net good thing. But the evaluation rubric that I use is, for myself, is it increasing my own faith? That literally is it. And do I have the impression of those that I talk to and build relationships with that it's increasing their faith? Now, there are people I have talked to where I've gotten the impression that TLC is actually diminishing their faith, but they are the minority. There are fewer of those people than there are that I think are, let's say, feeling the nutrient richness of this place in terms of the sheer content that's coming in. And I think what unites TLC, and Jacob, I'm interested in your thoughts on this, and Sandy, you too, but is that there seems to be a spirit of we each individually have enough faith within us that we can sort of put our individual dogmas secondary. It's not that we don't have those dogmas, but that when we're in this space, we're like, no, those. I mean, I'm confident enough in my dogmas that and I'm also confident enough in, let's say, a unified reality of the Almighty. There's a unified truth in the Almighty. And I am willing to explore that unified truth with Jacob, with Sandy, with whoever who wants to explore that unified truth in that same spirit, knowing that, if my dogmas do change, that I have more faith in that unified. I have more faith in the Almighty than I do in my own dogmas or my own,
Right. Yeah, the way I put it is, my God is the God of truth, and I am not afraid of learning new truths. And if I do learn something that changes my faith, then I'm actually better for it.
Likewise, I feel that same way.
Sandy, did you have?
I don't think in terms of dogmas. I don't think, well, at least not in that term. I just know that in life, the thing I always said to people is the only thing I can't afford to lose is God. And that was based on faith as relationship. So I did a lot of journaling. I would write out my thoughts. I would talk to God. I would tend to, like, even ending up here was one of those weird conversations, as much as anything else, because I was basically just pissed off at church. And so I found myself bouncing from, like, church to a conversation with PVK, heard him talking about Jacob, and suddenly I'm here, and now I'm learning all kinds of stuff.
So, I mean,
but
going back to how TLC was formed, Father Eric says we should call it the Peterson sphere, and I think he's right. And what brought people together was, in fact, seeing Jordan Peterson and being like, hold on, there's something new here. Now, for most people, my sense is that they thought, oh, here's somebody with solid psychology who's explaining my faith to me. And what at least Chezi and I, our experience with Jordan Peterson was, oh, this guy has really nice psychological stuff. Why is any of this religious stuff new to you guys? And that's partially been, I think, why my orientation. I mean, I got involved because I had left religion by the wayside, because I was going to focus on my own mental health. And what happened was, in focusing on my own mental health with Jordan Peterson, I got surrounded by a bunch of people who had lots of questions about the Hebrew Bible. And hence, you're on this Hebrew Bible study, right? And it felt to me like God had put me in a place to, I felt like God was using me to answer people's questions in ways that needed to be answered. So that's what TLC has been for me, or the Peterson sphere, or whatever you want to call it. And my thought has always been, I will contribute as much as I can when I am actually contributing. And when I feel that I'm no longer contributing, then I will go somewhere else. And that's what happened.
Yeah, quick question. What do you think it was about TLC that kept you and Hezi, and I know there are a few other Jewish people in the corner, but in this predominantly Christian space, what do you think it was that, I guess you kind of answered that, the curiosity about the Hebrew Bible, but was that it, or was there something else about the way you were treated, the people? I guess what I'm curious about is more like your subjective experience versus the objective, like, biblical analysis.
So, I mean, Chezi's father is, and I have a video, the Jewish Jordan Peterson. Chezi's father, in a very real sense, is the Jewish Jordan Peterson. He's a professor of psychology in Israel, and he, so Chezi's excitement with Jordan Peterson was like, hey, hold on, my dad's been saying this stuff for years. People love this guy. They're going to love my dad. And so I think for Chezi, that's a large part of it. For Yosef and me, a large part of it is because of our interest in psychology. So Yosef is getting his PhD in robotics, and he's very interested in, he got in through the Vervaeke channel because he was academically interested in Vervaeke's work in cognitive science. And so, I mean, for the knowledgeable Orthodox Jews who are involved, generally, the reason we're involved is kind of the opposite of, I think, why a lot of Christians are involved, because I think the Christians see something new religiously, and I couldn't sit through Peterson's Genesis lectures because it was like boring and like it's like why would I bother when I could just open up like Safaria and get like in that same hour I could get so much more. Like how is this
Wait, so
worthwhile?
Okay, so how did you get involved with PVK? You just messaged him one day or what?
No, so PVK, oh, now I'm gonna tell a story.
Be charitable, Jacob. Be
Intellect-
charitable.
Oh, no, you're
I'm gonna put a light
so
on.
how I got involved in PVK was I was involved in the Eric Weinstein Discord server.
I think I remember you mentioning that. Yeah.
And Eric Weinstein did not have the community skills to create a culture on Discord which could maintain itself against the attacks. And there are cultural attacks against anything that's IDW or Peterson. Like the woke are actually trying to destroy us. And I encountered PVK several people. I mean, there's a Jordan Peterson meetup here in Los Angeles, and the person who ran it was the first person to mention PVK to me. PVK came on Eric Weinstein's Discord server, and I went on his Discord server and very quickly left because just was not and several people asked me to come back, and so I did go back, but I was there with an invitation and a kind of guarantee that this is not a Christian server, right? That was the thing. Like when I first went into PVK Bridges of Meaning, a bunch of people said, this is a Christian server, get off. And a bunch of people went, no, this is not a Christian server, right? And so yeah, that's how I got involved with Bridges of Meaning. And I mean, PVK's videos were very good at digesting things, and I was hoping for someone who I thought when the necessity came for this community to have a leader, I thought PVK would step up, and he didn't.
But I see what's happening now. So Father Eric asked the question, would this community survive without PVK? And I think the answer to that 2 years ago was no. I'm pretty sure that the answer to that today is yes. And the reason for that is that I know Grail Country would keep going. I know Luke Thompson, and I
Grail
know
Country, well,
and Nathan, and I know Chad will keep going, and I know Grim will keep going, and they are the triple. The way that Jordan Peterson spawned for Vakey, Vanderklay, and Peugeot, Vanderklay, the three most influential people after Vanderklay are in this order: Grail Country, and I'll put Luke Thompson in that bucket, and then Grim, and then Chad. But they would keep going because they believe in it. Now, to your point, Jacob, like if PVK disappeared,
you're just wrong.
But if PVK would disappeared, the amount of people involved would diminish significantly. To be sure, we'd probably lose 80% if I had to guess, maybe. But the point is that the size of the communities of those three are roughly the size of where PVK was in like 2001 or 2021, 2022. And the communities in those three are strong enough that like it's personal relationship. The reason I know I'm right on this, Jacob, is it's personal relationships. Is that I'll keep talking to Chad no matter what because I like Chad. No, but seriously, how is
I'm
like if
sorry,
PVK disappeared, I'm gonna keep talking to Chad. So like, yeah,
Neil, I'm sorry, you're just wrong. um,
you think I would stop talking to Chad? You think he would stop making videos?
Chad might stop making videos. It's possible. But Chad wouldn't have the material like it. The community would dissolve. I mean, I've seen communities dissolve many times. Communities do dissolve.
It would fracture. You're probably right. It would fracture. Yeah.
I mean, and this is the thing, like, I mean, communities need structure.
But I guess where maybe I'm approaching it differently than you are, Jacob, is that when I'm saying it would fracture, did Christianity stop because of the Protestant Reformation and the splitting into how many different, you know what I mean? So I'm sort of like, you could go on either side of that equation. You could say like, oh, all of them are false, and and I'm more inclusive. I do not presume to judge when fractures occur because I think everything is in the hands of God, Jacob. I think everything is in the hands of God. And so I do believe that God can turn the fracturing into a greater good. Like I imagine China stamping out Christianity. And it's like, all right, we're going to put in our bishops, our Chinese communist bishops in the Catholic Church in China. So now we've stopped Christianity. And then here come the Mormons sneaking in. They're like, all right, let's stamp out Mormonism. And then the Presbyterians come into China. We stamp that out. It's whack-a-mole with Christianity. It's like, how do you stop that in a top-down? Sorry, I get carried away, but you know what I mean?
You do, and I mean it's cute, but I like that. This is kind of like what gets me is I think we have a lot of people who haven't actually studied how communities work, who think that they can make things work how they want them to work, and like
I studied at the feet of ZBT. I learned everything there is to know about communities.
Look, maybe I'm wrong. It's possible. It wouldn't be the first time. But I have been withdrawing out of this low corner is because I don't see leadership standing up to do the types of things that need to happen in order to maintain community, right? And community needs to be maintained. If you are going to have community, right? So Grizz will keep on going because he knows how communities are formed, and I have no doubt whatsoever that Grizz will keep on going. I have zero doubt that Grail Country would fizzle within minutes of PVK being gone. And maybe I'm wrong. Chad, I think, might continue to do, but the fact is Chad has a lot of experience from Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think Chad has a lot more wisdom than most people in this little corner recognize.
Amen, brother. I agree completely.
I mean, Chad has been since the beginning one of the people that I have been trying to lift up, and I jokingly say I want to be Chad the alcoholic when I grow up. That's one of my lines. So look, will the world fall apart without PVK? No. Is PVK going down a road which I think is disastrous? Yeah.
Where do you think it'll be in a few years?
Nowhere.
It's Still walking the wrong way on the road to Emmaus, huh?
I mean, look, hopefully, where it will be is PVK will probably be at a church which would support him in his endeavors, and there will be small estuaries at CRC churches all over the United States, and it'll be another small little movement within something in the history of the CRC.
I heard you say what you're doing is a project to feed the homeless or generate.
No, it's a project to provide. So what I have started, Fountain of Comfort,
Yes.
is a public resource for mental health, and part of the hope is that we would be able to provide mental health services, including to the homeless.
Okay.
Yeah, that's So one of the things that I said is I'm done with sitting around and talking. I want to do actually something that is impactful, and that's my project. Yeah, Fountain of Comfort is my project to hopefully. I mean, if people get mental health resources, that's good.
Are you doing that through a local synagogue that you're partnering with, or it's just you're renting your own resources, time, space?
Yeah, it's all me. Right now, Fountain of Comfort
Wow.
is tiny. I am hoping I was hoping that people in this little corner would think it was a worthwhile project, but apparently they don't.
Well, I don't think that. Oh, go ahead, Sandy. Go ahead.
Just a question. You might be gonna say, is it because it doesn't fit in with what they already perceive this little corner to be? Put it that way.
No, I think it's because it's me.
There might be some of that, Jacob. You're right. However, I suspect a stronger motivation is that the people who attend local church are doing those things as part of their local church, because that's what local churches do. If they're serving the community properly, as a church should, that's what they're doing. And so most people have a framework for that because they have their local church.
Okay, if their church is offering mental health services, that's news.
Some
to
do.
me.
Some do.
I know the Catholic Church does, and that's why I'm interning at Catholic Charities. But I know Jewish Family Services does that. From how I understand most Protestants, how Protestant certainly non-mainline Protestant work is, they're very, very skeptical of psychology, and there's I mean, from what I have seen, I don't think they're looking forward in the way that this little corner has identified to the mental health crisis that's coming upon us.
I agree with you 100%. In that the things that psychology can teach us are not reflected in most churches. And I would say that's probably something but I mean that in all respects, Jacob. So I mean that on an individual one-on-one counseling. I mean that in group sessions. So churches are the tail of the dog in terms of, let's say, psychotechnology. New psychotechnology that emerges. Now the mega churches, they tend to be more spectacle, and but what I think you're right, that what TLC is doing is taking advantage of the best psychotechnology that we've discovered, because it's the reaping and the looming, right? That Grimm talks about. So if we discover a good idea, we take and we use that. But then the question is, how are we bringing that richness to our local communities? Now I'm smuggling in tons of TLC stuff into my local Bible studies. I do it every week. It's smuggled in because it's just part of me. It's part of my personality now. So I can't, but I don't have to use the word psychotechnology. I can illustrate it in an example, in a story, I don't have to use that word.
So when I was establishing Fountain of Comfort, and this is actually part of the discussion that I'm going to have next week on Friday with Reverend Cedric Parcells about therapy and theology, is what I went and I spoke to my rabbi, and my rabbi said a religious plumber doesn't start a synagogue that offers plumbing services. He starts a plumbing business that is run according to religious principles, and that the abbess of a they call it a monastery, it's a convent, Greek Orthodox, and I never expected the abbess of a Greek Orthodox monastery to sound so much like a Hasidic rabbi. She said the exact same things. I think there is a problem, a very real problem, where people are conflating religion with mental health. And I think those two things need to be separated, because it causes all manner of problems.
I agree with you. Yeah, the soul is not the same as the mind, is not the same as etc.
And theology needs to be the queen of the sciences. Everything needs to bow down towards God. And the problem I see is that the psychology has become an idol.
I have to go, Jacob, but it's been really nice getting to know you. And I'll say this. I pray that you are still involved in TLC, because you have a unique voice that I think is important and useful. And 90% of the time, I like that unique voice. And that's way higher than my one out of three, joke average. So, anyway, so it's nice meeting you.
It was very nice meeting you. Thank you for coming by. You're always welcome back.
Yeah, I'll be back. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Sandy. Good night.
Have you seen my cat?
Not enough. Oh, cats.
Shadow, where do you think you're gonna go?
Hey, Shadow. Yeah.
She's staring at me. I don't know why. So how have you been, Sandy?
Good. I popped on here. I was listening on the way up from Guelph. I just was down at a local writing community. Has a couple of times a month they'll get together for different things, and which reminds me, I've got to remember. Well, okay, before I go, I've got to put in some dates in June that I'm going to go to their spring retreat. I've got to book time off work, and yeah. So I was chatting about. There was just three of us showed up today, and we had a great chat about who likes what authors and what books. And I do not read enough. I think that when I come in here, and I think that when I go there, it's like, what was it? Oh, On the list of favorite books from one of the guys that showed up was Till We Have Faces. And I went, you're kidding me. I hear about this book a lot in some Discord groups that I'm hanging out in. And oh shoot, who's the guy that Ted likes reading? It's not going to come to me. Anyways, a number of very well-known books, authors, philosophers, and things were mentioned on the list. And I'm like, I have this very simple life and very simple reading patterns, apparently. Yeah.
I mean, some people read more, some people read less. I have not been reading as much as I certainly used to. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, pinged a few practical questions off these. So this is where I'm at with some of my writing things. I'm really mad at myself because I've been saying for the last 3 years I'm going to get this memoir finished. And, you know, I did a few months ago get a name of 2 people that I could pay to edit a poetry chapbook. And I've got 3 general readers going through just because they like me that are looking through some of these things.
Are you going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons?
I would like to. I know nothing about Dungeons and Dragons except that my son used to play all of these games quite often. And
I think you would actually really like Dungeons and Dragons.
The one time, the most recent time that I played, I don't think it was Call of Cthulhu. It was one of the games that Joshua plays. Still, I think. I accidentally won it for them because I had no clue what the rules of the game were, but we ran up against this witch in one of their scenarios who had a anyway, she had some knife, and I happened to have a briefcase. And everybody else at the table was trying to do all the logical, role-playing game responses, and I'm like, she's going to fling that knife at somebody, and we need to get at the whatever's behind her and the knife. And so I threw the briefcase at her and impaled the knife through the briefcase. And Joshua looks at me and goes, I would never have thought of that. So, yeah, I think I would enjoy it. Do we have a set time yet? Where they're hoping?
I think they were talking about Mondays at 8 p.m. Pacific, which might be a bit late for you.
Might be. How long do the games go?
I'm
Like
guessing it's going to be like 3 hours.
3?
2 to 3 hours. Yeah.
I still have Tuesdays off, so maybe. Might work.
What are you doing, Andre?
How am I
How are
doing? I found out my grandfather died a few hours ago.
Sorry.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, it was a long time coming. I think I may have shared he had advanced dementia for like maybe the last 2 years. And when my dad left he has an investment property a few hours away and he spends a few days there sometimes. He told me about his condition. It was like, yeah, it seems they said he's probably got a few days left. I'm like, okay, like I'm expecting it. And just got a message before, and it's of course it's a shock, but it's also like not a pleasure. That's the wrong word, but like it's
a relief.
I'm glad. A relief, yeah, it's a relief because I can't really tell his state of mind, like if he was suffering, because he can't communicate that. But from just observation and the stuff my dad's gone through alone, like he doesn't have to deal with that deterioration anymore. And last time I saw him was 2 years ago at Christmas, and he sort of knew that I was a good person, and he vaguely knew who I was, but not my name. And he was still lively and lucid. Like he jokes at my dad, and he pointed to me, goes, "Oh, he's strong. He can protect you. Stick around with him." So Cincinnati's humor, but I didn't want to see him past that point because he just went quite quickly, and it is too painful to sort of deal with the state of dementia than it is to sort of go, oh well, maybe I fit in that one more visit, because it's sort of it doesn't really add anything, and it gets a bit too hard. So yeah, it's he stayed in there a lot longer than I thought he would. Like, good 2.5 years having the condition, so it was quite strong. But yeah, I'm just I'm glad he doesn't have to suffer anymore, and I just mainly want to be a source of support and strength for my dad at this time, because it's his father, and I was never super close to my grandfather. Like, he took care of me when I was young sometimes, and sort of saw at Christmas and stuff like that. But we're not like I've never had like a very close extended family or anything like that, and I think maybe some of that's being like a white Australian family. It's not one of those cultural things that's sort of pushed upon you and like put as a high value to like be like very close with your cousins and extended family and everything like that. Whereas like ethnic Australia, I feel like that's a very strong virtue and value. Like, like your third, fourth, fifth cousin, and then nieces and nephews, and like your whole family tree almost. And it's very important to sort of show respect and everything like that. So I mean, it's still like tragic, but it's not like I'm not losing as much as someone who like grew up with their grandfather sort of like taking care of them every like second night, and spending heaps of time with them.
So I'm guessing most of the arrangements were already made, or
I believe so. I think from what I know, like, because my grandmother passed, I think 2.5 months ago, and everything was pre-planned, and it was like funeral was like in the week afterwards, when she passed. Like they had everything like down to a dime. They didn't want to fuss over anything, so I think it's all taken care of. But I have to say.
Okay. Yeah. How many people were at your grandmother's funeral?
30, 40 maybe. So close family, and then sort of like relatives and stuff like that, and also there's a few family friends who came along for support, which was really good. And
yeah, I mean, I know it sounds morbid, but a while ago I was thinking, okay, like if I were to die, like who would come to my funeral? And I know my cousins and stuff would come, but I was just kind of wondering, like, okay, would people like even like how would the Discord even know? My funeral would probably be had before anybody on the Discord would even find out.
yeah,
Which
yeah. And where did my StreamYards go? Hang on, give me a second. Oh no. Okay.
Well, maybe my nephew,
there we go.
my nephew might say something on the Discord.
I think if you're worrying about who on the Discord would mourn you, that's probably the last thing you should be worrying about. Because I know several people who have died who've been like regular Discord members, and it has spread.
No, I remember there were all kinds of memorials and like stuff like that, but like but that's not real. I was thinking like, how many people would actually like come to the funeral?
Oh yeah. No, I'm with you there. I'm just saying, like, the news does spread, like, eventually, and even though, like, you could argue, like, yeah, Discord friends aren't real friends and whatever, but like, that from experience, like, that people do really pay respect when like a regular member passes, and
Yeah,
I've
I
seen
mean,
it firsthand.
my Discord. So what happens to a Discord if the owner dies?
So I don't know officially and like specifically because I'm only inferring this, but I think maybe the family or like maybe the government sort of like there is some sort of obituary or sort of like statement of death, which is attached to the person's identity or like their credit card or something like that, which would nullify their online activity. Because there was a guy on the Portable who passed away from a heart attack, and he was logged on for another 40 days, and it said he was spending what was he playing? He was playing Minecraft or something non-stop for 40 days after he died. And I'm like, oh, okay, so no one's logged him out. So it's something that's done like specifically. So someone has to like flag that. But then he sort of went offline at a certain stage.
So I have one of my friends from high school, actually junior high school, who I have made the heir to my like Google accounts because Google has that.
Okay.
Yeah, so he has access, like, and I've kind of made him basically my heir. So I guess he could get access and stuff. I'm not sure he would actually care about the Discord though.
You can do that with Google, and I think also Facebook have like if I die, this person's in charge.
Yeah.
But to your earlier question, who would visit your funeral?
Yeah.
It just reminds me of I believe it was in Camus, either The Stranger or The Fall. I think it was The Stranger. He said something about there was a funeral of a man in the guy's apartment building at the very top, and he was like a miser, and like no one really sort of hung out with him and didn't have a lot of friends. But then at his funeral, everybody showed up from like the neighborhood and the building and everything, and none of these people really knew the man throughout his whole life, but they all took their turn to sort of stand up and say like pleasantries about him and what a good guy he was. And I think Camus writes that nobody recognizes your virtues, your values, or your specialties until after your death. In such to mean that like it's one thing to notice like what someone means to you when they're living, but once they die, then you can sort of reflect upon, like, pick apart like things that you think are valuable, and also in a way for social credit, and stand up there and say like, oh, he was such a good guy, and like, well, I knew him, and these are my like stories about being with this guy, even if they're quite menial, but you didn't really know them. You just vaguely knew them, and I think part of it's pointing towards the really to save the time you have with the people whilst they are alive, rather than sort of have like an ad hoc valuation of their life after death.
I mean, people, yeah, after people die, I mean, it becomes a lot easier to just think about the good things.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier to cope psychologically if you only think about the good things. If you like try and like remember, like, say, your mother, and you think, oh well, she had a good character, but she did beat me quite a lot, and I hated her for it. And she was also like, she swore a lot, and she was terrible to the neighbors. And actually, I did hate her. Like, you sort of have to lean towards the positive to get through that grief. Otherwise, you're just going to be bitter and resentful.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't thinking quite that bad. I was more
Yeah.
thinking, you know, like I went to a funeral, and this person was like, everybody, like, while they were alive, if you asked, you know, what's one word to describe them, there were a few words that people would definitely use, and none of those were used at the funeral. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Well, this Bible study has not been anything about the Bible.
That's
And
an interesting comment.
Is this three different people who are, like, there's Real Truth, Truth Tellers, M. Woods, and Truth Myers, and I'm guessing all four of them are the exact same person?
It seems like a sock puppet account, yeah, because when I jumped in the comments, I said, oh, the spammers in the chat. They said truth teller, not spammer. And that was M. Woods.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a spam account, and I almost banned it. But then I noticed that they were responding to what we were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Johnny! Johnny! Johnny, you should come on every once in a while. People keep on talking about the Orthodox Jews in this little corner, and they forget you're there.
To be fair, there was also Matthew above, which could be mistaken as a spammer, but he was on a stream I was on, and he was just very, very, very talkative.
Oh,
so when I saw him, I'm like, okay, so that's just him. But
so
the rest, yeah.
This looks orange on camera. In real life, it is the exact same color as a Trump hat. And
I've never heard anybody say that before.
and it says "Made you look," and I went walking. I walked happy at the Santa Monica Farmers Market, and the People's Republic of Santa Monica is very, very crazily left. And I'm just walking down the street with this hat on, and one of the guys in one of the stalls, he had a cowboy hat, and on his he was on his phone, like, and he said really loud, "Whenever I see a Trump hat, I just want to shoot first and ask questions later." And I wasn't sure if he had made out that it says "Made you look," not "Make America Great Again," but it was just so hilarious. Like, to be that, like, he was so angry and so, like, invested, and it's not like he was even, like, at 20, like, it must have been like two years ago, so it was like not the most, you know, no, it's probably 1 year ago, so it was just so funny. Yeah.
And he was probably on the left.
Yeah.
So that's also weird to me that a leftist would, like, be like that sort of gun toting, because usually they're the opposite.
No, it's the leftists who are the murderers. I've become convinced. Look at the French Revolution, the guillotines.
Hmm.
Look at what happened with the Russians during the Bolshevik Revolution. Look at
Yeah.
what
I mean, the modern left though is what I meant.
Oh, they generally don't have guns, but I definitely think they'll be the first ones to murder you.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, did you see Noam Chomsky, who was supposedly he's like supposedly the godfather of the left, saying anyone who didn't get vaccinated shouldn't be treated in hospitals?
What?
That's just stupid.
Noam Chomsky, he's like, if they're not going to
Yeah.
get vaccinated, they shouldn't get medical treatment.
But isn't he an anarcho-syndicalist or something like that as well?
Yeah,
Some part of his old brain is thinking like, oh, anarchy.
the guy is just. I mean, when he said that, it was just hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. But yes, this is. I do have a Trump hat. I do have a "Make America Great Again" hat, but this one just says "Made you look," and it is one of my favorite hats.
Yeah, it's interesting how like, sure, Trump is a figurehead for like everything else that happened through the elections and whatever. But the fact that a hat, like a symbol pointing towards Trump, made people so angry is like beyond absurdism. They're angry at Trump, but then they see the hat and they go, "Oh, that reminds me of him." It's like operant or Pavlovian conditioning.
Trump
In a
derangement
sense.
syndrome is definitely true. It's definitely real, and Sam Harris is a good example of that. Donnie says the crazy thing is that Trump wears a Jacob hat. Are we actually going to talk about the Bible in this Bible study?
I would like to.
What in the Bible would you like to talk about?
Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. I mean, we could go back to the Mishnah in Avodah Zarah.
We could do that. I would do that.
Um,
I had the page that you recommended on the Discord open for 3 or 4 days without
which
closing
page
it.
did I recommend on the Discord? Oh, the
Everybody needs to read the.
Oh yeah, that's the introduction to. So Maimonides, when he was 25 years old, believe it or not, wrote. So let me explain what the Mishnah is. So around the year 200, Rabbi Judah the Prince, Yehuda Hanasi, he he decided that since people were forgetting the oral law, he would compile a mnemonic poem to remind people of the various teachings of the various rabbis.
Whoa.
And so he arranged them in 6 orders, and this mnemonic poem became something people could memorize. And so that's the Mishnah, and it's there so that as you go through it, you should be able to remember all of the various things that we consider to be in the oral law. It's not. it doesn't contain the entirety of the oral law because that would be impossible, but it's supposed to remind you so that if you know the Mishnah well, you would know the oral law. Now, there were other statements which were not included in the Mishnah that were gathered into what's called the Tosefta, and that's also something you can actually find. And there are also other statements which are Tanaitic statements, which are statements of the sages of the Mishnah, which are gathered in other places, such as in the Talmuds or in the Midrashim. And so those are the various teachings of those various sages. So Talmuds, in the Talmud or the Jerusalem Talmud, it wasn't actually made in Jerusalem, is a commentary on the Mishnah made in the land of Israel around the year 400, and then the Babylonian Talmud was made in Babylon. What was I saying? In Babylon, and it's in Aramaic. So that's what the two Talmuds are actually commentaries on the Mishnah. Now, what Maimonides did when he was 25 is he wrote a commentary on the Mishnah, and chapter 10 of the tractate Sanhedrin in the Mishnah is the one which talks about heresy. And in his introduction to that chapter, Maimonides basically defines the essentials of Jewish faith, and that's where we get the 13 principles of Jewish faith from. And it's one of the most authoritative texts in Judaism. Although I have to say, plenty of people don't like a lot of the things he says there because they view it as too rationalist. He's very, very critical of people who take things in the Bible too literally. And I mean, we could. It's not very long. So here, I will show you guys if you want to find it, where you can find it. So Mishnah and Sanhedrin is in the order of Nezikin, damages. There's Sanhedrin. And chapter 10. And in the commentaries, there is the commentary of Maimonides. And there is chapter 10, Maimonides. I will put a link into the chat. It's not extremely long. You can sit down and read it in a little while, but it is too long for me to actually go through on the stream.
Yeah, that's quite long.
Yeah. And this is where we get the 13 principles of Jewish faith from. Yep. So, any other thing from you guys wanted to talk about?
Uh, we could read through a bit of this because it sounds interesting to me. I know that it's quite long, but
So the first part of it, sure. So the first part of it, he's just, well, if you
Love
do-
that first sentence. That's one of my favorite.
Well, okay, that first sentence is from the Mishnah itself. So
I know, but I love every time I see that.
yeah. So the funny thing is, the Mishnah starts, all Jews have a world share in the world to come, and then the next line is, and these are the ones who do not have a share in the world to come. Like I said, it's supposed to be a mnemonic poem. So oftentimes there are juxtaposing sentences which are supposed to remind you general rule and exceptions. So
Yeah.
general rule, everybody goes to heaven. Exceptions, and it gives you the exceptions. And funny enough, so it names one Gentile out of the entire Bible, Bilam, who doesn't have a share in the world to come. And so the Talmud asks, so does that mean everybody else does? And basically the answer is yes, everybody else does. But it says Bilam and anybody like him. But in the entirety of all the Gentiles in the Bible, and there are plenty of Gentiles in the Bible, the only one who is named as not having a place in the world to come is Bilam. Okay, where were we? We were looking there. Okay. I have seen fit to speak here about many great and especially weighty fundamentals of faith. You should know that masters of Torah have had differences of opinion regarding the good that comes to a person when he does the commandments that God commanded us through Moshe, our teacher. Peace be upon him. And regarding the bad that will find him if he transgresses them. Very many disagreements according to the difference in their intellects. And the reasonings about them have become greatly confused to the point that you will almost not find anywhere a man for whom this matter is clear. And you will not find a definitive thing about it with any person excepting with much confusion. The first group reasons that the good is the Garden of Eden and that it is the place where one eats and drinks without physical exertion and without effort. And that there one finds houses of precious stones and beds fitted with silks and rivers that flow with wine and fragrant oils and many things of this type. And they reason that the bad is Gehinnom, and it is a place of burning with fire in which bodies are burned and people are afflicted with all types of afflictions that are recounted at length. And this group has brought a proof for their reasoning from the words of our rabbis, may their memory be blessed, and from verses of scripture, the simple meaning of which completely or partially fits with what they are saying. And the second group reasons and thinks that the anticipated good is the days of the Messiah, may it speedily be revealed, and that in that time, people will all be angels, all living and existing forever, and they will become of larger stature and multiply and be powerful until they inhabit the whole world forever. And that Messiah, according to their thinking, will live forever with the help of God, and may he be blessed. And they reason that in those days the earth will produce woven clothes and baked bread and many such things which are impossible. And they also reason that the bad is that a person not be in existence during those days and not married to see it. And they bring a proof from many statements that are found with the sages and from many verses in scripture, the simple meaning of which is in agreement with what they are saying, and with some of it. And the third group will think that the good that is hoped for is the revival of the dead, and that is that a person will come to life after his death, and will come back together with his relatives and members of his household, and eat and drink, and that he will not die again. And they think that the bad is that he will not come to life after his death, together with the ones that come back to life. And they bring a proof for this from many statements that are found in the words of the sages and from many verses in scripture, the simple meaning of which indicates what they are saying, or some of it. And the fourth group will think that the intention of that which is to come to us for doing the commandments is physical rest and the attainment of worldly desires in the world, like the fat of the lands and many properties and many children and physical health and peace and security, and that the king will be from Israel, and that we will rule over the ones that troubled us. And they think that the bad that gets us to us if we deny the Torah is the opposite of these things, like that which we experience today during the time of the exile. And they bring a proof according to their reasoning from all the verses in the Torah, from the curses and the other sections, and from all of the stories that are written in scripture. And the fifth group, and they are many, join all of these matters together and say that that which is anticipated is that the Messiah will come and bring the dead back to life, and they will enter the Garden of Eden, and they will eat there and drink and be healthy all the days of the world. But about this amazing issue, I mean the world to come, you will find few that in any fashion bring it to their mind to think about it or ponder over this fundamental, or determine upon which matter this word applies. If it is the objective, or one of the previous opinions is the objective, or to differentiate between the objective and the cause that leads to the objective. Rather, what the entire people, the masses and the intelligentsia, ask about is how the dead will rise, naked or dressed, and whether they will arise with the same shrouds with which they were buried, with their embroidery and designs and beautiful stitchery, and with a cloak that only covers their bodies. And they ask when the Messiah will come, whether there will be rich and poor, and if there will be the strong and weak in his days, and many questions like these all the time. And you who looks into this book, understand this parable that I am drawing for you, and then prepare your heart and listen to my words about all of this. Place it in your mind that when they bring a young boy to a teacher to teach him Torah, and that is the greatest good for him as to what he can attain of wholeness. But due to his few years, weakness of his intellect, he does not understand the level of this good, and that which will come to him of wholeness from it. And therefore, it is necessary perforce for the teacher who's more whole than he to encourage the study with things that are beloved to him due to the smallness of his years. And so he says to him, read, and I will give you nuts or figs, and I will give you a little honey. And though through this, he will read and exert himself, not for the actual reading, as he does not know its value, but rather so that they will give him that food. And the eating of these delights is more precious in his eyes than the reading, and good without a doubt. And so he thinks the study is labor and effort, and he labors in it so that he will receive through his labor the objective that is beloved to him, and that is a nut or a portion of honey. And when he grows and his intellect becomes stronger, and that thing that will be weighty for him before becomes light in his eyes, and he goes to loving something else, they encourage him and arouse his desire for that thing that is beloved to him. And his teacher says to him, read, and I will buy you fine shoes or lovely clothes. And through this, he makes efforts to read, not for the actual study, but rather for that garment. and that clothing is more weighty in his eyes than the Torah, and that is for him the objective of its reading. And when he becomes more whole in his intellect and this thing becomes negligible in his eyes, his teacher will also place his mind on that which is greater than this. And then his master will tell him, learn this section or this chapter, and I will give you a dinar or 2 dinars. And through this, he reads and exerts himself to get that money. And for him, the money is more weighty than the study, since the objective of the study for him is that he get the gold that they promised him for it. And when his intellect is greater and this amount becomes light in his eyes, and he knows that this is something insignificant, he will desire that which is weightier than this. And his master will tell him, study so that you will be a leader and judge, and people will honor you and rise in front of you, like with so-and-so and so-and-so. And he will read and exert himself in order to achieve this stature, and the objective will be the honor. That people will honor him and raise him up and praise him. And all of this is despicable. And nonetheless, it is necessary because of the smallness of the human intellect that he make the objective of wisdom something else besides wisdom, and say for what thing he is learning. And that is that honor will come to him. And this is making a laughing stock of the truth. And about such study, the sages say it is not for its sake, meaning that he does the commandments and studies and exerts himself in Torah, not for that thing itself, but rather for the sake of something else. And the sages warned about this and said, do not make it, the Torah, into a crown with which to aggrandize yourself, and not into a spade with which to dig into them. And they are hinting to that which I have explained to you, that there is no ulterior objective to wisdom, not to receive honor from people and not to earn money. And so one should not be involved in the Torah of God, may he be blessed, to earn money, and there should not be an ulterior objective for him in the study of wisdom, except only to know it. And so too, there's no objective to the truth except that he knows it is the truth, and that the Torah is the truth. And the objective of it, its knowledge, is to do what is in it. And it is forbidden for a whole person to say, what I do when I do these commandments, which are good character traits, and I distance myself from sin, which are bad character traits, that God, may he be blessed, commanded not to do. What is the reward that I will receive for it? As this is like that which the child will say, when I read this, what will they give to me? And they will say, such and such a thing. And when we see the smallness of his intellect, that he doesn't understand the size of what he is involved in, and we see that he asks for another objective, we answer him according to his foolishness. As it's stated, answer a fool according to his foolishness, Proverbs 26:5. And the sages have already warned about this as well, that should not render any be the objective of his service to God, may he be blessed, and the performance of the commandments. And this is what the whole man who grasped the truth of these things, Antigonus, the man of Socho, said, Mishnah Avot 1:3. Do not be as a servant as servants who are serving the master in order to receive a reward. Rather, be as servants who are serving the master, not in order to receive a reward. And indeed, he wanted to say with this that one should believe in the truth for the sake of the truth. And that is the matter they call one who serves from love. And they said, may their memory be blessed, Avodah Zarah 19a, his commandments desire greatly, Psalms 112:1. Rabbi Eliezer said, his commandments and not the reward of his commandments. And how lucid is this? And it is a clear proof for that which we have written above in the essay. And even greater than this is what they said in the Sifri on Deuteronomy 11:13. Lest you say, behold, I am learning the Torah so that I will be rich. so that I will be called a rabbi, so that I will receive reward in the world to come. For this reason does the statement teach to love the Lord your God. Everything that you do, only do it out of love. Behold, this matter has been clarified to you, and it has become clear that it is the intention of the Torah and the foundation of the intentions of the sages, peace be upon them. And only a crazed fool will ignore this, because silly thoughts and bad ideas have corrupted him and mixed him up. And this is the level of Abraham, our father, peace be upon him, Sota 31a, that's from the Talmud, as he served from love. And toward this path, it is fitting that there be arousal. And since the sages, may their memory be blessed, knew that this is a very difficult matter, and not every person can grasp it. And if he grasps it, he doesn't agree with it at the beginning of the matter, and reasons that it is not a clear belief. Since a person will only do an act in order to achieve a goal or to prevent a loss, and if it is not so, that matter will be futile and empty for him. If so, how can you say to one who follows the Torah, do these acts and don't do other ones, but not for the fear of punishment from God, may he be blessed, and not to inherit a goodly reward? This is a very difficult thing, since not all people grasp the truth, to the point that they reach the understanding of Abraham, our father, peace be upon him. And therefore they permitted the masses, so that their faith will sit well, to do the commandments with the hope of reward, and to separate from the sins from the fear of punishment. And we encourage them about this and strengthen their intentions to do the commandments out of ulterior motives, until he grasps and knows what is the truth and complete way, as we do with a child at the time that he studies, as we have brought in the parable. And they blamed Antigonus the man of Socho about this explanation, explaining what he explained to the masses. And they said about this, be careful with your words, as explained in Avot 1:11. Now I have to say, well, he's going to say, and the masses do not lose everything by their doing the commandments out of fear of punishment and hope for reward, except that their performance will not be complete. And nonetheless, it is good for them, so that they have the ability and habit and effort of fulfilling the Torah. And from this, they will be aroused to know the truth, and they will turn into those that serve from love. And thus, this is what they said, may their memory be blessed, Sanhedrin 105b. Truly, a person should be involved in Torah, and not for its sake, as from not for its sake comes for its sake. So what he is not saying is that all of the good things will not actually come to you, because they will, but that you shouldn't do the Torah in order for those good things to happen to you. Because while the sweets and the money and the honor will come, that's not the reason why you should do it. And it is from that which you must know that with regard to the words of the sages, may their memory be blessed, people are divided into three groups. The first, and it is most of what I have seen, and of the compositions that I have seen, and of what I have heard about, believes them according to their simple meaning, and does not reason that they have any sort of esoteric meaning. And for them, the impossible things must correspond to reality. However, they do this as a result of their not understanding wisdom, and they are far from the sciences, and they do not have wholeness, so that they be aroused on their own, and that they did not find someone to arouse them. These people hold that the sages, may their memory be blessed, only intended in all of their straight and sweet words what this group understood according to their intellect from them, and that they are according to their simple meaning. And even though that which appears in some of their words is repulsive, and that which pushes the intellect away, to the point that if it would be recounted to the unlettered, and all the more so to the wise, they would wonder in their ponderings over them and say, how is it possible that there's someone in the world that thinks like this, or believes that it is a correct belief, all the more so that it is good in their eyes. And one should be pained about the foolishness of this group of simple-minded people, ones. As according to their opinion, they are honoring and raising the sages, but they are in fact lowering them to the lowest depths, and they do not understand this. And as God, may he be blessed, lives, this group destroys the beauty of the Torah and darkens its splendor and makes the Torah of God the opposite of its intentions. As God, may he be blessed, said in the perfect Torah, that they should observe all of these statutes, and they shall say, this is certainly a wise and understanding people, this great nation. And this group recounts the simple words of the sages, may their memory be blessed, such that when the other nations hear it, they say, this is certainly a foolish and silly people, this small nation. And the ones that do this the most are the preachers that explain, inform the masses of the people about that which they themselves do not know, and were it only that since they did not know and understand, they would be quiet, as it is said at Job 13:5, were it only that you would be silent and it will be considered wisdom for you, or that they would say, we do not understand the intention of the sages in this statement and not how it is to be explained, but instead they think that they understand it and attempt to inform about it, to explain it to the people what they understood according to their weak intellects, not that which the sages said. And they preach at the heads of the people the homilies from Tractate Brachot and from the chapters entitled Chelek, and from others. This is the chapter that he's talking about, that the introduction is to Chelek, according to their simple meanings, word for word. And the second group is also numerous, and they are the ones that saw the words of the sages or heard them and understood them according to their simple meaning, and thought that the sages did not intend in them anything more than that which is indicated by the simple understanding. And they come to make them foolish and to disgrace them and bring ill repute to that which has no ill repute. And they mock the words of the sages, and they believe that they are more refined in their intellect than the sages, and that they, peace be upon them, were stupid, simple-minded fools regarding all of existence, to the point that they did not grasp matters of wisdom in any way. And most of those that stumble in this error are those with pretense to the medical sciences and those that carry on about the laws of the constellations, since they are, according to their thinking, understanding and wise in their own eyes, and sharpened philosophers. And how far are they from humanity, according to those that are truly wise and philosophers? Rather, they are more foolish than the first group, and many of them are idiots. And it is an accursed group, since they question great and lofty people whose wisdom was already made clear to the wise. And were these idiots to exert themselves in the sciences to the point that they would know how it is proper to organize and write things in the science of theology, and things which are similar to it for the masses and for the wise, and they would understand applied philosophy, then they would understand if the sages, may their memory be blessed, were wise or not, and the matter of their words would be elucidated for them. And the third is, as God lives, very small, to the point that it is not fitting to call them a group, except in the same way as one says about the sun that it is a species, even if it is in fact unique. And these are the same people to whom the greatness of the sages they be blessed, and the quality of their intellect, from what was found among their words, things that indicate matters that are very true. And even though these things are few and scattered in different places in their compositions, they indicate their wholeness and that they grasped the truth, and that the impossibility of the impossible and the necessity of that which exists was also clear to them. And the members of the third group knew that the sages, peace be upon them, were not saying jokes, and it became established for them that the sages' words have a revealed and a secret meaning, and that in everything that they said about things that are impossible, they were speaking by way of a riddle and a parable, since this is the way of great wise men. And therefore, the greatest of wise men opened his book by saying, Proverbs 1:6, to understand a parable and a metaphor, the words of wise men and their riddles. And it is known to the linguist that a riddle is when the matter intended by it is hidden and not revealed by it. And it is said, Judges 14:12, I will tell you a riddle, etc. Since the words of the sages are all about supernal matters of ultimacy, they must then be riddles and parables. And how can we blame them for writing wisdom in the way of parable and making it appear as lower things of the masses, when we see that the wisest of all men did this with the Holy Spirit? I mean, Solomon in Proverbs and in the Song of Songs and in some of Ecclesiastes. And why should it be difficult for us to explain their words rationally and to take them out of their simple meaning in order that they fit reason and correspond to the truth? And even if they are holy writings, they themselves explain verses of Scripture rationally and take them out of their simple meaning and make them into parables. And it is the truth, as we find that they said to explain the verse, 1 Chronicles 11:22, he smote the two powerful lions of Moab, that it is all a parable. And so too that which is stated further in the verse, he descended and smote the lion in the pit, is a parable. And so too that which is stated 1 Chronicles 11:17, who will give me water to drink from the well of Beit Lechem? And the entire story is all a parable. And so too about the story of Job in its entirety. Some of them said it was a parable, and they did not explain for what things it was made a parable. And so too, some of them said that the death of Ezekiel was a parable. And there are many examples like this. And if you, the reader, are from one of the first two groups, do not pay attention to my words and not to any matter of it, since no part of it will be fit for you, but rather it will hurt you and you will hate it. For how can light foods that are few in quantity, but proper in quality to be fit for a person who is accustomed to bad foods? Rather, in truth, they will hurt him and he will hate them. Did you not know that the people that were accustomed to eating onions and garlic and fish said, Numbers 21:5, and our souls are disgusted, etc., about the manna? But if you are from the third group, so that when you see one of their words that intelligence pushes off, you stop and reflect about it and know that it is a riddle and a parable, and you lay burdened in your heart and occupied by the meaning of the idea and the composition, and it is in its rational meaning, and think to find the intelligent intention and the straight faith, as it is stated, Ecclesiastes 12:10, to find words of desire and written straightly, even words of truth. And if so, look into this book of mine, and it will help you with God's help. So, and then he goes
Can we
to talk
can we
about,
summarize
sure.
from what we've read here? Because it's quite a lot.
Yeah.
So from the first parts, it's sort of instilling the idea that you can't really sort of guide a child into wisdom because they won't find sort of any value in it. So you entice them with material goods. And then as they sort of gain more intelligence and wisdom, those goods aren't, like, they don't value them the same. So you sort of up the game until you get to, I think the last one was dinars. And then you offer them a position of like
Of authority. Yeah.
authority, because authority is more powerful and more important to them than the material at that point. And then by the time they've gotten to authority, then they're sort of grasping the idea of wisdom for wisdom of itself.
For the sake of wisdom itself, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's he's very much railing against people who take things too literally out of the certainly the words of the sages, but even the words of the Bible. And yeah, so after that parable, he starts going into people, and he says the first group of people, like they think, oh, like they're the fundamentalists, right? They're the people who are like, oh, so the Bible must be exactly as I read it, and so if you don't read it that way, you're some sort of heretic, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a second group who think, oh no, like the Sam Harrises of the world, right? Who like look at the Bible and they're like, oh, this is Bronze Age or Stone Age or whatever he wants to call it. Iron Age, he calls it Iron Age wisdom.
Right.
And he, just dismiss it. And he says there's a third group, and that's very few people who understand that, oh, these are words of wisdom from people whose wisdom has been established. And so I have to try to understand what these things mean and try to make them correspond to the world. Now, I don't. The problem we've had in the Jewish community is there are people who think of Maimonides as some sort of excuse for them to be rationalists in ways where they completely discount like anything which doesn't make sense to them, right? And they think, oh, well, if it doesn't make sense to me, then it must not be saying what it was saying. And I think it's a better problem to have than being a fundamentalist or a Sam Harris, who is a different type of fundamentalist.
Yeah.
But it's still someone who places their wisdom above everyone else, and that's still a problem.
So it's like a total frame of either subjectivity or maybe almost solipsism, that like you're the most important source of wisdom, and if you can't comprehend it, then there's no importance to it.
Right.
It said something like you have to value truth for the virtue of seeking truth itself, and not what was it? Not that it's right to seek the truth. It's you need to accept the truth as the truth.
Yeah. And I think this is where he starts to I don't remember all of it. Is this where he starts? Yeah, I think this is now becomes his introduction to the 13 principles. We can go over them if you guys are still up for it. I mean, we went pretty long. Am I putting everybody to sleep?
It's a lot to comprehend, just that part.
Yeah. It's there if people want.
You could read them. Quick question on the difference between, you said he's very rational, but then you also said he doesn't like people who take things too literal. And I always thought that those two things were fairly close, but that means understanding them.
Okay, so people who aren't very smart, who are rationalists, will take things very literally.
Okay, so they could still be rationalists. They're just not necessarily using it very effectively.
Yeah, they're not really taking it very far, right? So, and this is why it becomes important to realize, okay, some things in the Bible are parables, right? So, for example, when it says God's arm, right, and it does talk about God's arm, right? Some people are like, oh, must be an arm. And
Yeah.
it's like, hello, how do you expect it to talk about God,
Yeah.
right? Like, no, God doesn't have an actual arm, right? But in order to speak about it, you have, you talk about things like, you know, so what's that famous? Apparently, it's actually. Um, I tried looking it up once, and apparently it was originally like made for commercial purposes. But you may have seen this. I see it in a lot of bathrooms. Um, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's called Footprints in the Sand.
Is
Yeah.
that the one about Jesus walking next to,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it
or
was like,
God,
he was there the whole time?
Y'all, don't ruin it.
Okay.
So, Footprints in the Sand. One night I dreamed a dream as I was walking along the beach with my Lord. Across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. This really troubled me, so I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me. He whispered, my precious child, I love you and will never leave you, never ever during your trials and testings. When you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. Right? And it's like it's I mean, it's not the greatest theology in the world. I'm not a huge fan of it. But like it's a good analogy, right? But we all know people that were they to find this in their Bible, they would be like, see, that's why Jesus had to be born as a man, because how else would he be able to carry me? Yeah. And it's like, oh, you silly, silly person.
So they missed the parable. They take it literally.
I mean, honestly, this is kind of like, yeah. So,
Wait, is Hezzy swearing at me?
here,
What's he saying?
he's quoting something that the sages say a lot. HaTorah nichtava b'lashon Adam, that the Torah was written in the language of man, and he's quoting a verse from the Bible. Kel shakai nodadati lahem. I have I mean, these are two of the holy names, but they're less common holy names. I was known by these two names, meaning that at times people don't know God by the highest or clearest revelation. There's more and less revelation, but God gives you as much revelation as you can handle.
I had a question about another part. So what number is it? Oh, it doesn't say. It's talking about like the masses and the intelligentsia will ask about how the dead will arise.
Yeah.
So I take it that's
making fun of people who, like, if the people who ask the people who ask, oh, like when the I mean, it's kind of like Jesus made fun of people as well when they asked questions like this, but it's like, when the resurrection happens, are we going to be wearing the same clothes we were buried in or different clothes? Right.
Okay, so it's right. So it's like it's sort of meaningless. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like,
Okay.
why, like, how is this a detail that is in any way like comparable to, we're talking about the resurrection of the dead, right?
Mhm.
Yes, there will be things about the resurrection of the dead, like, and what was I listening to? I was listening to something where somebody was talking about, oh, like, after the resurrection, how could, oh, it was a discussion Sam was having with someone about the kingdom, Sam Titteman, on his channel, and the guy's like, well, I mean, after the resurrection, how could we have kids? Because if we do, and there's no dying, like, the kids, like, where would the population go? It's like, oh my god.
Huh?
Like, he's like, there would be so many people because there's the resurrection of the dead, and then you're like having more kids and nobody's dying, like it would fill up all the space. It's like, you're why are you thinking in such literal terms
Yeah.
about something that is obviously beyond our comprehension?
Yeah.
People do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know if they're going to be old or young when they resurrect.
Oh, I hear this all the time. And frankly, like Antonio, I remember when I was talking to him, I told him to read this out of, because he was also like in the whatchamacallit camp. He was in the Jordan in the Sam Harris camp, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, this stuff, like, and while he liked the Jordan Peterson stuff, he was like, yeah, but is this really what any religion teaches? And it's like, this is Maimonides. Like, this is Maimonides. It's like 1,000 years ago. He wrote this almost 1,000 years ago. And he is one of the foundations of Judaism.
Is that question about the dead returning, is that somewhat similar to like the people who say, well, like if everyone goes to heaven, are my pets going to be there too?
It's funny you ask that. So I'm actually working on a book with a friend of mine on the souls of animals, and yeah, he doesn't like me even mentioning that I'm talking about it, but like because it's super secret. But yeah, sometimes like he takes things so literally. I'm like, no, that's like, please don't take things this literally. But people do, and like, I mean, there is a place where the postmodernists, like, they just lose all contact with reality, right? So I believe, and this is when, like, Trey, for example, says, Jacob, you don't actually believe the world is 5,784 years and 5 months old. I'm like, yes, I do. 5,784 years and 5 months, right? And he doesn't believe me, right? He's like, no, you have some explanation to it, right? Or when I say I believe in the resurrection of the dead, yes, I believe in the resurrection of the dead. Now, does that mean like I understand how I am going to be resurrected, or my grandfather is going to be resurrected, or my great grandfather is going to be resurrected. No, I don't. But this is one of the fundamental beliefs that Judaism has had for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, honestly, one of the things that goes back, like, you guys know what the Great Isaiah Scroll is?
No.
Let me find
The
you a
term,
picture.
but I wouldn't want to trust my memory on it.
So the Great Isaiah Scroll is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it is the only complete book of the Bible we have. From the no, I don't think it's the only one, but I think, is it the only?
From the Dead Sea Scrolls, isn't it like the most?
Would be. It's definitely the oldest complete book of the Bible that we have, because it's been carbon dated to like the dating from circa 125 BCE.
Right.
Like, so it comes from at least 100 years before Jesus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's got the text of Isaiah, pretty much the same text as of Isaiah as we have today. And it's the text of Isaiah that says, "My house will be called a house of prayer for all the nations." Right? And I'm like, take that prophecy, like, from, like, think how ridiculous 100 years before Jesus it is for a Jew to say, you know, this hill right here, everyone in the entire world is going to call this the Temple Mount, right? But that's what those words mean now. The Temple Mount. Like, that billions of people believe that's the Temple Mount, right? And the funny thing is, like, the Muslims are the ones who believe it the least, but they're the ones who actually have a mosque there, because they believe Mecca is like the most important place, but they have a mosque there, so they also think of it. But like, I remember when the Dalai Lama went and visited the Temple Mount, I was in Israel, and a picture of him at the Western Wall was printed in a on the front page of one of the Orthodox Jewish newspapers, with just that verse as the headline, right? And it's like, and that's the only way the Dalai Lama is ever going to find his way into the pages of an ultra-Orthodox newspaper. But look, I mean, I don't know what else you can say to, like, the Hebrew scriptures than they've been right for thousands of years, it seems to me. And so, like, do I understand how the resurrection of the dead is going to be? No, I don't. Do I understand how the Messiah is going to come? No, I don't. Do I understand, like, whether the temple is going to appear miraculously, or it's going to be a UFO that lands, or Chazi is going to get his dream and everyone's going to be like, yeah, Chazi, go build it. And Chazi's going to take his crew and go build it, right? And everybody's going to be standing there, go Chazi, go Chazi. Chazi's already, like, imagining it, like, he's got it all planned out. I can tell. But like the I mean, I don't understand how, but I do believe in it because that's the best source of knowledge that I have.
Yeah. Would you go as far as to say that it's not understandable by human mind, the resurrection? So there is no way you can understand it, but because of your belief, like you have fasted belief that it is going to happen.
Well,
you can't understand how it will happen.
I'll tell you what the biggest problem with me understanding it just literally is that Orthodox Judaism believes in transmigration of souls. And like 500 years ago, the Arizal said fewer than 1 in 10,000 people is a fresh soul. So like and I am severely doubtful that I am a fresh soul. So Chazi said, I mean, if they pay my fee, I think you'll do it for free, Chazi. I'm pretty sure you would do it for free. But so I don't exactly understand how bodily resurrection and transmigration of souls and the Jewish concepts of fractional souls and fragmentary souls, like how all of that jives together. I really, it's beyond me.
Yeah.
Is that because, okay, how do I ask this? Okay, so that comes down to who or what gets resurrected then. Because in all of that list of that you just sort of went through from Jewish perspective, probably the only thing that I would recognize is the first one, thinking of one complete intact soul, like.
Yeah, the Christian concept of soul is the Greek idea of soul, which is very different from the Jewish idea of soul.
But at the same time, I think about the fact that here under some of the Jewish beliefs, I hear like that there's, I'm guessing transmigration. Is that similar to, we would say, reincarnation? Or?
Well, the reason oftentimes we use transmigration is because we don't like the Hindu.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the Hindu concept either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what most people think of in reincarnation.
Right.
But I mean, the idea in Hebrew is called Gilgul Neshamot, which literally means, so Gal means to roll. Gilgul means the rolling or roiling of souls.
So I need to make a coffee, but I have a question that I don't know if this is taken from the Tanakh or if this is from the Kabbalah, but do souls come from the chamber of Guf, or is that specifically Kabbalah-esque?
The Talmud mentions that. So it's something that is mentioned more explicitly before the Kabbalah was revealed, that there is a chamber called Guf that, and actually, I was just, so part of that book we're talking about talks about there's two separate chambers. There's a chamber for called Guth for Jews and one for Gentiles. Different.
Uh-huh.
But the details is so Chazi, the details I mean most of the details there are people about souls and things regarding souls are from the teachings of the Arizal, which were revealed about 500 years ago. But they're based in things that, including the Talmud itself talks about Guth, but I don't believe that's based on any verse in the Bible. So I'm going to read what Chazi wrote. It would be an honor, but need to find a crew that can work with no metal tools. So actually, the Temple Institute I was reading, which I'm not a huge fan of, just by the way, but the Temple Institute they're building the stone altar with no metal tools off-site so that it can be reassembled if necessary, when necessary. They're the ones who want to rebuild the temple, and I think, which is a huge mistake, but whatever. The Christian Zionists have the money, so who knows? Need to find a shmir. Shmir means like grout. The high priest keeps changing his mind on the tile color. I work with these people. Yeah, I think Chazi probably actually knows people at the Temple Institute. God have mercy on our souls. It's okay, Chazi. Rabid Zionists are allowed on my channel.
There's a lot of things in Judaism that actually gets talked about that would probably be seen as very imaginative in the Christian context, but it's not that people never think about some of those things. Like, I don't know. Or for me, like I've been thinking since Jack's passing that, well, A, I felt like he stuck around for a while, and B, I've thought about the thing they say, that says that if you have uncompleted, like if you haven't really felt like you've kind of finished your growth, what God gave you, I forget what the terminology would be, but you can go back and take another run at it, kind of thing. Or maybe,
Well, the idea of transmigration is definitely that you did not complete whatever was the reason for you being on Earth. But at the same time, like we talk about Moses' soul being like reverberating through every generation, or even, I mean, the other shepherds as well. So like, honestly, there are people like, if Rabbi Mullet was here, he would probably be like, why are you talking about this stuff? This is not stuff that like we should publicly speculate about. Certainly, even if it's not obvious that these things are to be discussed publicly, and I certainly don't know. But people are very interested, and I mean, there are people who I think do in fact know. Like, I do believe that the Kabbalists do understand this stuff a lot better than I do. And the reason for that is because I know that in order to study Kabbalah, first you're expected to be a very good Talmud scholar. And I know that like Talmudic scholars are much smarter and better thinkers than I am. So like there's a recognition that there really is a hierarchy there, which I do feel confident putting my rational trust in. Yeah, that was part of what we were talking about on the Discord server, like the difference.
I put a question or two up there and then deleted them because I was like, yeah, no, they're already talking about stuff. Let's not.
Well, I mean, so we were talking about what does it mean for something to be irrational, right? And what the too many like neo-atheist types believe that religion is irrational, as in it is contra-rational. It is opposed to the rational. It's believing things that your reason tells you not to believe. And that's not how Judaism defines faith at all.
No, because that sounds almost like to be irrational is to be less than rational, whereas it doesn't allow for the possibility of it to be more than rational.
Right. And I think, I mean, ultimately, when you talk about I think that is actually how Martin Luther understood faith, was in fact that it was against reason. I mean, he had some really horrible things to say about reason.
Have not read the man.
You don't like Martin Luther?
Me?
This is the first time I've heard this.
Me? Not like Luther? What?
Luther has some unbased things.
Here, famous Martin Luther quote.
My best friend as a little kid was Lutheran. This has totally demolished my sense of
So, stop. Reason is a whore, the greatest enemy that faith has. It never comes to aid of spiritual things, but more frequently than not struggles against the divine word, treating with contempt all that emanates from God. Martin Luther.
So then what is reason in his estimation? Is it simply related to the time in which he lived? Like, is he thinking it's simply whatever happens in your thought process and not in your faith? Or like, what does he see reason as being? I mean, I can see the words, but the words cover up what he's actually, his perception.
Here's another place that has Martin Luther quotes on reason.
There you go. This is bigger.
Yeah.
Reason is the devil's greatest whore, not just a basic one.
But by nature and manner of being, she's a noxious whore. She's a prostitute, the devil's appointed whore. Whore eaten by scab and leprosy, who ought to be trodden underfoot and destroyed. She and her wisdom. Throw dung in her face to make her ugly. She is, and she ought to be drowned in baptism. She should deserve the wretch to be banished to the filthiest place in the house, to the closets. Martin Luther, Erlangen edition, volume 16, pages 142 through 148.
Wow.
But since the devil's bride, reason, that petty whore, comes in and thinks she's wise, and what she says, what she thinks, is from the Holy Spirit, who can help us then? Not judges, not doctors, no king or emperor, because reason is the devil's greatest whore. Martin Luther's last sermon in Wittenberg, second Sunday in Epiphany, 17 January 1546.
He doesn't seem to have a great imagination, does he? I mean, he has one insult.
Or it's a pretty strong one.
Let's see what the answer is. Luther seems to have recognized that a mind not given humbly to God will find things to be reasonable that are completely outside of God's will and wisdom. Well, okay. Paul concurs along these lines. Great, my other favorite guy. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper. Romans 1:28. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by renewing your mind. This is, sorry, it's like,
I'm picturing you getting to heaven at the end of all time, and there are Luther and Paul sitting having a great morning cup of coffee.
if Martin Luther made it to heaven, there's something wrong with heaven. Paul, I could much more believe than Martin Luther. Martin Luther was a horrible human being.
Yeah, he
I'm trying to
definitely
remember.
doesn't seem that convivial.
By his own standards, I don't see how Martin Luther is part of the elect. And part of his whole thing was like, if at the end of your life you have bad beliefs, then you're going to hell. And he certainly towards the end of his life believed in things which are so contrary to anything godly. The guys, yeah, I have a very hard time seeing how Martin Luther or John Calvin made it to heaven. Luther had some unbased takes. Well, at least Andrew's not a fan of Luther.
So that's one of the reasons why, like, you rail against Protestants is Luther. It seems.
It's not just Luther. I mean, it's Luther and Calvin are the two greatest.
That's why. That's why I said one of the reasons.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were both horrible people. Like, you know, the Anabaptists. I mean, you look at like Menon, Jacob Steinmo, or whatever.
Yeah, I know.
I forget the names, but like there were good people in the Reformation. They weren't Martin Luther or John Calvin, that's for sure.
I mean, I don't know anything about John Calvin other than Calvinism.
He murdered dozens of people. He's one of the most successful serial murderers in human history. He had them executed for blasphemy or heresy. I think the estimates are somewhere between 50 and 60 people.
That many?
Yeah. Yep. Several dozen people that he had executed, and forget everybody that he had flogged or just simply terrorized. I mean, he terrorized the entire city of Geneva. But
well, I might be a skeptic, but I don't think that's good.
Yeah, like it's like
Sounds bad.
you know, this is somebody who had dozens of people, scores of people killed because they disagreed with his theology. And you can say the Catholic Church did the same thing, and they did,
Yeah.
but like I don't have to defend any of it. So one of the most like Rabbeinu Asher, one of the most greatest rabbis in Jewish history. He lived after about 100 years after Maimonides, and he's one of the great rabbis. So he visited a city where the rabbis were allowed to put to death murderers themselves as opposed to handing them over to the Gentile authorities. And he spoke positively about that.
Mm.
That is the furthest I have seen any prominent rabbi get towards being okay with capital punishment. And I went looking, and
Yeah.
so Rabbeinu Asher simply said, "Hey, it's a good thing that this community has this capacity," and he was talking about like murderers, and I think I'm not sure if it was thieves as well, but I think it was murderers. Like they were putting to death people who were murderers. Like that's about the worst thing you can say of anyone we consider to be a great rabbi.
So
Like I am not aware of any rabbi being, like pro putting people to death for adultery, anything like that.
yeah. So he simply condoned it or spoke positively to it,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
didn't actually sentence people to their deaths.
Himself, I think maybe if I may be misremembering, but I think he said when he visited, he sat on the court with them on a case.
Okay.
So he may have sat on, like, the most I can remember is he may have sat on a court which put to death a murderer. And this is like 800 years ago.
Yeah.
And while it's, I mean, in Jewish law, I can actually be kind of critical of him a little bit, because generally, like the question becomes, hey, like we stopped capital punishment thousands of years ago, and there are ways that I could bring other sources that would be critical of him, and I think there were people who were critical of him, but like you're talking about putting people to death for murder.
Hmm.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
on the one hand, like I can never be for like a death penalty. Like I'm just morally opposed to it completely. But on the other hand, like being 800 years ago, the standard of justice and ethics, it was quite a lot different for the time. So I can understand like the
I'm actually
historicity.
I'm pro death penalty in general. Like I have no problem with the United States going doing the death penalty, but Jewish law does not permit, like it. Jewish law permits Gentiles to put people to death for murder. It does. It does not permit, as any way I can see, of a Jewish court imposing the death penalty, and that's the one thing that, like, you could maybe be you could be critical of Rabbeinu Asher because of that. But, like, which I frankly I think is okay, honestly, like, I don't even see it being irrational, like being very critical of him, as in saying, like, this is the type of thing that somebody, like, should go to hell for. Like, sorry, no. Like, this makes much more sense, putting murderers to death. And there's definitely an argument you can make from the Mishnah and the Talmud that for murderers, that's an okay thing. But,
Okay.
like, John Calvin put scores of people to death for blasphemy and heresy, including John Servetus, whose only crime was denying the Trinity.
Uh,
And they burned him at the stake. Which is why I keep on talking about whatchamacallit. I keep on talking about changing the name of Calvin University to Servetus University.
Yep.
One of these days, it'll happen. It'll happen.
I did do a bit of reading on Servetus this last week. Just basic history and things. And didn't delve deep into his beliefs and theology. Yeah. I'm still figuring out my who do I think Jesus is. Not God.
Glad to hear it.
Well, God is God. How can you?
but is it?
There's just too many things that he said that make zero sense if he's talking to himself. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Andre.
No, you said God is God. I just said, is it? Is God
Is
God?
it? Yeah. I believe so.
'Cause I think I'm a Trinitarian, but I don't know. Is the idea makes sense to me with the Holy Spirit, but when it comes to the incarnation of God within Jesus, I'm like, probably, but like it's a mishmash of things. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So-
the Bible clearly says there's one God. There's nowhere in the Bible that even, like, a little bit talks about the Trinity. Not the
Yeah.
Christian Bible, certainly not the Jewish Bible.
No.
And what I always point out is Trinitarians want to say that Jesus was a God, yet they don't think he was a very good teacher because he didn't teach the Trinity. Like, why do you need to come up with all of these creeds, including the Apostles' Creed, which aren't things Jesus taught?
Yeah, that's true. I don't think he was a god. That's why I say incarnation, but still I'm not convicted
nice
towards
dude.
that entirely. Yeah, like, nice dude. Yeah.
I was mulling over the whole transfiguration scene this week. Really, it's kind of interesting thinking, you know, you've got Moses, Elijah, and this quiet teacher from the middle of nowhere, all standing on a mountain. If this is so, one of the things that I wondered about was, why does it say, so he goes up the mountain to pray, he leaves his disciples there, and they make a point of saying suddenly Moses and Elijah come to talk to him. How is that? I mean, why suddenly do they come talk to him? And why does it make me think of, you know, scenes in... It doesn't seem that it's that, to me anyways, it doesn't seem that it's that much more miraculous to have Moses and Elijah suddenly appear on a mountaintop to speak to somebody. I want to know, so what did they tell him? Why did they come to talk to this young guy? What were they? Because I'm not...
The first question is, how do you know that it's Moses and Elijah?
Mm-hmm. It could be the same as Saul with, well, no, that, even though, because how do you know it was Moses and Elijah? It could have been angels. Could have been
Just random people who were crazy and thought they were...
and appeared out of nowhere. Could have been.
Well, that's why I think it says appeared out of nowhere.
I hate to say, Jacob, but you sort of were talking like Mark then. Random people coming from nowhere. Maybe they're crazy.
I feel zero compulsion to believe anything that's in the Christian Bible. I have zero reason to actually believe anything in the Christian Bible.
So the weird thing I was thinking about this week was, I was thinking about how Moses goes up on the mountain and gets to watch the rest of the people crossing over into the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
And Elijah being, you know, but he doesn't get to go. And then Elijah being the prophet who God takes, he bypasses the, you know, typical exit plan of, you know, death and burial. And I'm thinking of all of the people that could be sent to talk to somebody who's about to go and face death. Is there a reason why those two? What would they have to say to him? If there's a reason why Jesus is going to face death and he's going up onto a mountain to sit and talk to God about it, what would they tell him? Like, what would the message be? Because it doesn't say that, oh, they went, oh, here's this, you know, here's this. It didn't say anything about them going to worship him, them going to, you know, like, it doesn't. It just says they were all up there talking. And that's the part that intrigues me, is what would they go and talk to him about?
Why do they need to go anywhere to talk to him if the sense of God is that he's all permeating and that he's everywhere at all times?
Right, which makes me think that perhaps if this is part of a story that actually happened, that it would be that they, you know, it would be like the, you know, the angels appearing to, you know, Jacob fighting the angel, you know, where he slept with his head on the stone, and he dreams of the, you know, the ladder going up to heaven, or you know, Abraham talking to God about Lot, you know, in Sodom, and all of the if this then that scenarios he presents to God, trying to get it to a point where he can get Lot safely out of there, even, you know. And I'm like, there's a lot of weird conversations that happen in the scriptures. So weird conversations aren't completely unheard of. And if this was one more weird conversation that potentially happened, what was it about? You know, because it doesn't say that much about it. There's a lot more details in some of the other stories.
I mean, have you listened to much James Tabor?
No.
He talks about this stuff. You might like it. I mean, so yeah, he talks about this stuff. I personally just find it much easier to simply say, after Jesus died, people couldn't accept his death. And for me, as somebody who like is kind of sort of within the Chabad community and sees how like his people being incapable of accepting the Rebbe's death is playing out, it just becomes so much easier for me to see how I think it played out, which was Christians, the people who knew him could not accept that he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, but like there are psychologists who are studying Chabad because of this, partially because Christians are just so fascinated with this could be a very similar thing. Now, I certainly hope that there's no Paul who like turns Chabad into another religion. I don't think I can't imagine that happening. But like seeing people not being able to accept the Rebbe being dead and claiming that he's still alive and claiming visitations and claiming like they're just people who are grief stricken, and that's what happens with grief. I have no difficulty just being like, yeah, all the stuff that happened supposedly to Jesus after his death are just people who were really grief stricken. And there are people like, for example, Tripp will say, well, why would people be willing to die for something if they hadn't actually seen the risen Jesus? And it's like, you obviously don't know very many Chabadniks, because when you see how far people will go because of the inspiration of the Rebbe, including, you the it's kind of funny that I ended up with the thumbnail for this video being the Minecraft,
I love it.
Yeah.
like those guys who built that tunnel, they were all born after the Rebbe died. All of them. All of them. Yet they, with like, I don't even know where they got shovels from, right? I mean, I don't know to say whether, like, hopefully they spent the money and bought actual shovels, or like, were they digging without shovels? Because like, I don't know where they would have gotten. No, I mean shovels aren't very expensive. I guess somebody might have bought shovels or at least borrowed them. But it's like, and I guess in there are, I guess in New York everybody has like snow equipment, and like so I guess having shovels is normal. But
It'd
like,
be a different kind if they're anything like snow shovels here, though, because they're shaped differently. They're intended for like scooping
yeah,
and stuff. They're not like a spade like you'd take to the garden, or intended shoving into soil. So
I can't imagine New York borrowing a shovel from someone. Buying a shovel, yeah.
well,
But,
okay, you have to understand the Hasidic community is very tight knit.
Tight knit. I
But,
thought you
yeah.
I thought you said something else.
No, tight knit.
Yeah, I heard. I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. I mean, I still don't know how. My rabbi was making jokes because he's been doing construction. Like the synagogue's been under construction for months, like not just months, years, and he made like he's trying. Hopefully, it's finally going to be finished soon, and every time like. I just remember somebody asking him, "Is it going to be okay? Like, is it going to be finished soon?" And he said, "Well, if I can just get these guys from Brooklyn, some bacher from Brooklyn to come and finish it up for me." He was cracking jokes about the guys. Oh God. But like, what? Like I said on my server, I would prefer they were trying to expand that synagogue than sitting in their mom's basement covered in Cheetos dust masturbating to porn.
I mean, I guess.
I mean, they at least had some inspiration to like actually do something. God, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, I'm reading this biography of the Rebbe.
Yeah.
It would, I mean, it would be nice to have somebody that is so inspiring that like people cannot like they lose their mind when he dies, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's very normal for a lot of us not having experienced anything like that to not even understand, not even think like that's a possibility. But it is a possibility. It is something that has happened in history several times.
I think you can definitely lose your mind over. You can, when you lose somebody that's been that influential, it is, you do kind of. That's a way of describing it.
Well, a lot of Americans said to me, a non-British person, "Oh, how did you feel when your queen died?" I'm like, we don't care. We didn't care. This isn't the UK. They're like, but your queen died. Your queen. I'm like, technically our queen, sure, but like she's got
Really?
nothing related.
No.
Yeah, like there was no real reaction. I mean, maybe some like there's a Republican movement in Australia that wants to move away from having a constitutional monarchy.
Yeah.
But then there are like some diehard monarchists who probably were upset. But it was nothing like the UK where people were actually like
Weeping.
weeping and that said, still you compare the Queen's death to Princess Diana's death, and it pales in comparison because the Queen was going to die. She was like incredibly old.
Yeah.
But Princess Diana, that was the people's princess, and like the nation stopped for that, and it wasn't just like that she died; it was how she died, being hounded by paparazzi and into a tunnel. Like it was a tragic death as well. But yeah, the idea of like someone being so influential that like people just can't believe that they're gone. I do find it sort of funny that because there's something that Americans know about like constitutional monarchies and the connection of the Queen to my country, they think that we must be like grieving.
Well,
like,
yeah,
like
and we kind of like. I think I kind of would have liked to have some sort of queen figure, like Queen Elizabeth. Oh, and King Charles III has cancer. May he have a speedy recovery. But I would also like to kind of see him abdicate in favor of Will, because I think Will would be a much better king. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Americans kind of envy. Did you see when Stephen Fry spoke to Jordan Peterson?
no.
So it was an interesting discussion, and one of the things he mentioned was how, despite having been a Republican, he's from Britain. He had started to see how the Queen served a function because of Trump. And he said he thinks that like the president would act a little bit differently if every week he had to go and just bow in front of somebody dressed up as Uncle Sam. You know? And the fact that the Prime Minister of Great Britain once a week has to go bow before the Queen and now the King and just kind of give a little report, right? Like that's I actually think there is a use to that.
I mean, like the monarchy is like largely a symbolic structure in its essence, and like the Queen and the royal family does have some executive power, but they never ever use it. But if you compare that, like, yeah, having an analogous structure in the US would be good, I guess, but you do have that sort of symbolic nature in things like the Pledge of Allegiance, where it is sort of adhering. It's like pledging your nationalism to like the symbol of your country, and it's not even something that's historical or cultural. Like the foundations of the Pledge of Allegiance was literally invented by a guy who owned a flag company and came up with it in order to sell more flags, which is both funny but also one of the most American things I can think of, because it's hyper capitalist. That he sort of it's a good grift, but it's also like a really good symbolic idea saying, okay, all the kids have to like every morning stand up and like pledge allegiance to God, the country, and the flag, because it does instill like patriotism and nationalism. Or maybe nationalism is the wrong word, but it is a symbolic gesture. I don't know if does the president pledge allegiance? I don't think so.
No, the Pledge of Allegiance, and frankly, a lot of schools have stopped doing it. We did it every day, but yeah, I think the Pledge of Allegiance is only like it's less than 100 years old, but our entire
Yeah.
country is less than 300 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
1976. So yeah, our country isn't even 300 years old yet. How old is the U.S.?
I think Andrew wants a StreamYard link as well in the comments.
Well, he's definitely not getting one.
Okay. Well,
What does Chazi have to say? And maybe if we drop the Trinity, we can perhaps see him as a prophetic figure, but this requires many changes. For example, I can only take Muhammad seriously as a prophet if they drop the idea that he is here to replace Moses and that we Jews have a fake version of the Torah. Play nice, we can all get along. Chazi, Andrew has a question on the Discord. Is there a hierarchy of Noahide laws? If I have to choose between eating a live animal and stealing from an old lady, which do I choose?
Steal from an old lady. But watch out for her pain.
I mean, it's the easier option at least.
Stealing from a lady is definitely easier than eating a live animal. I mean, come on. Would you,
It depends on the animal, though. Like, do you know what an ortolan buntang is? So in not France, but like I think it's New Caledonia or one of those like French colony islands. They have this meal, and it's like this tiny bird, and they cook it in the shell. So it's like half alive but half cooked, and it's famous for being like it how do I describe it? It's like it's like something rich people do. It's not something that like you can just go and do with on a holiday. But when people do it, they get the napkin and they drape it over their head because the cultural sort of connection to it is that it's so shameful to do that you need to shroud yourself from the gaze of God so he doesn't see you doing such a sinful thing, eating this half-live bird.
Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't do stuff like that.
So that's a lot easier because that's a live animal, but it's not exactly more moral than stealing from an old lady.
So Chazi says, "Da lifnei mi ata omed." Know before whom you stand. That's apparently his answer to the hierarchy. Like, come on, what would Jesus do? I mean, what would God do? Have you do?
Neither, but as in it's not even an appropriate question. Hey, which law should I break today?
Well, no, I mean there are situations when like
You have to.
yeah, you have, let's say you're starving, right? Should you eat a live animal, or should you steal money in order to like eat good, like
Yeah.
not a live animal.
Hmm.
Get it? See? There you go.
Yep.
And I would say, I would thank God that I live in the United States and that's not a problem. Okay, people.
I gotta go to sleep.
You're going to sleep. I think I'm going to go to sleep.
1:30.
You should go to sleep, Sandy. Don't you have
And
work?
I actually work at 10 tomorrow morning again.
Then why are you up so late? Go to bed. Have fun at work.
I will. Have a good night.
To
Have a good
end
night.
the stream. Good night, people.
Good night.